The Circum-Baikal Railway is a historical railway in the Irkutsk region of Russia. It runs along the northern shore of the southern extremity of the lake from the town of Slyudyanka to the Baikal settlement. Until the middle of the 20th century, the Circum-Baikal Railway was part of the main line of Trans-Siberian Railway. Later on, however, a duplicate section of the railway was built, sometimes called a unique achievement in engineering. The Circum-Baikal is one of the picturesque sites of the area around Lake Baikal. History. When the Siberian Railway, later called the Trans-Siberian Railway, was being designed, it was divided into 7 sections. Circum-Baikal Railway was one of these, being the section from Irkutsk to Mysovaya Wharf, now the town of Babushkin, on the southeastern shore of Lake Baikal. Survey work. The first survey of a possible route for the first section of the Circum-Baikal, from Irkutsk to Lake Baikal, was carried out in 1894. Initially, the surveyors proposed to build a pontoon bridge and have the railway go down the right bank of the Angara River. However, later this variant was found to be inexpedient, as the level of water in the Angara was subject to fluctuations, and during spring thaws, crossing the river would have been difficult. Therefore, the planners decided to establish the railway from Irkutsk along the left bank. The construction of the railway along the Angara from Irkutsk to Cape Baranchik on Lake Baikal was carried out in 1896 to 1900, at a total cost of 3.47 million rubles. In the meantime, east of the lake, the railway from Sratonsk was completed up to Mysovaya on the east shore of Lake Baikal, with the purpose of establishing a through railway connection. Before the Circum-Baikal was finished, it was decided to link the shores of the lake with a train ferry. Trains were carried on the special icebreaker ferry Baikal, which had 3 parallel tracks on its train deck. Another, smaller icebreaker ferry, the Angara, was also built, which carried passengers and goods, but not trains. In the cold winter of 1903-04, when the icebreakers were not strong enough to break the ice, a railway line was laid on the ice, and railway wagons were pulled by draft animals. Meanwhile, the construction of another section of track, intended to fill the gap in the Trans-Siberian Railway, was carried out. The routing of its eastern section, from Mysovaya to Kulchik, passing along the flat southern coast of the lake, did not cause difficulties. The greatest complexities were encountered on the western section, meant to connect Irkutsk and Kulchik. A group of researchers under the direction of the Professor Ivan Vasilovich Mushketov studied 4 options for routing this section of the railway, from Irkutsk along the left bank of the Irkut River across the Zykysunsky Ridge to Kulchik, from Irkutsk through the valleys of the Greater Olka and the Krutaya Guba rivers, and then along the coast of Lake Baikal up to the Kulchik settlement. For the Baikal station to Kulchik along the lake shore, from Belektwy village across the Tunkinsky Ridge to Kulchik. According to the results of the work of mountain engineering parties, on June 29, 1889, the Committee for the Construction of the Siberian Railway chose the first and third options from these 4 initial proposals. From 1899 to 1900, final survey work was done, and the engineers preferred to lay the line along the lake shore. Despite the difficult terrain along the shoreline, which consisted of a rocky ridge with abrupt slopes, towering 270 to 400 meters above the shore, calculations showed this option to be the most economical. The final decision on the line was made by the Committee for the Construction of the Siberian Railway on June 22, 1901. The cost of construction of the stated section of line was 52.52 million rubles. The transportation engineer Boleslav Kavramovich was appointed as director of construction. Construction of the railway. The construction of the Circum-Baikal Railway began in late 1899. Originally, the efforts of the builders were concentrated on the section from Mysovaya to Tankoy, beginning in 1901. The section from Tankoy to Slyudyanka was laid. The construction of these sections was carried out chiefly by the inmates and hard laborers of the Alexandrovsky prison. Workers began construction on the most complex section, from Slyudyanka to the Baikal station, only in the spring of 1902, with the aim of finishing it by 1905. The original plan required the construction of 33 tunnels, at a cost of 5.3 million rubles, a retaining wall for 3.7 million rubles, and viaducts for 1.6 million rubles. With regard to the possible negative impact caused by the lake water, the minimum necessary height of the track route over the water of Baikal was calculated to be 2.5 sajans. Technical conditions during the arrangement of the double-track sections fixed the capacity of the line at 14 pairs of trains per day. Owing to the lack of a flat shoreline, all the materials were brought by water to the site of construction. The complex terrain of the rocky shore compelled the builders to lay the majority of the route in tunnels or on artificial platforms cut out of the rock. The sides of the railway were strengthened with retaining walls. The workers, already suffering under the hot summers and harsh winters, were required to carry out the majority of the construction by manual labor. Every kilometer of the line required the expenditure of about 1 wagon of explosives. Earthwork was carried out in volume, approximately equal to 400 wagons. Embankments amounted to 28.7% of the length of the road, and cuttings to 71.3%. The construction of the railway track itself had to be made heavier, using stronger, heavier track and increasing the number of ties. Because of the difficult terrain, the minimum radius of the turns was reduced. The onset of the Russo-Japanese War in 1904 caused an acceleration in the construction of the railway. From 1901 to 1902, about 9,000 workers were employed on the railway, while in 1903–1904 the number rose to 13,500. The main efforts were focused on the construction of the railway line itself. Therefore, the development work of stations and towns in the path of the line did not take place. Works trains began to run on the railway on October 1, 1904, and on October 29, 1905 the line was brought into permanent operation. The length of the railway in its final form from Baikal station to Mysovaya was 244 versts. The aggregate value of 1 kilometer of the Circum-Baikal Railway was about 130,000 rubles. Active operation. When the Circum-Baikal Railway was put into operation, the Trans-Siberian Railway on either side of Baikal was linked, and began to be used to transport goods and passengers. The Circum-Baikal was called the Golden Buckle on the steel belt of Russia. Initially, only one track was built. From 1911 to 1914, the construction of a second track was undertaken, which increased capacity of the Circum-Baikal to 48 pairs of trains a day. In this stage of the construction of bridges and other engineering structures, reinforced concrete was introduced as a new material. As part of these works, considerable attention was paid to the construction of stations and station towns. On the section from Baikal to Slyudyanka alone, 10 stopping points were set up. Measures were taken to improve traffic safety and protect against landslides. During the revolutionary events of 1917 and the subsequent civil war, the Circum-Baikal was the scene of intense fighting, as evidenced by the mass grave graves of victims of those events. The Red Army, retreating from the Czechoslovak legions, blew up the Kirkadayski Tunnel on July 23, 1918. The tunnel was later restored, but there was no movement on the line for almost 20 days. In the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, the villages were actively developed, and homes, barracks for the troops, and power plants were built. Decline in 1940, exploration work was initiated to strengthen the track and ensure the safety of traffic on the Circum-Baikal Railway. Owing to the start of the Second World War, the work was completed only by 1947. The group in charge of development came to an unexpected conclusion and, citing the enormous cost, proposed not to carry out any work on the railway alongside Lake Baikal. Instead, they proposed to transform the single track from Irkutsk to Slyudyanka across the mountains into an electric double track. From 1947 to 1949, an electric transfer railway from Irkutsk via Bolshoi Lug to Slyudyanka was built, noticeably shortening the distance compared with the Circum-Baikal branch line. The main route of the Trans-Siberian Railway was therefore transferred to the new section. In 1950, construction on the Irkutsk hydroelectric power station plant was begun. In connection with this, the part of the Circum-Baikal Railway from Irkutsk to the town of Baikal that passed along the Angara River was disassembled and in 1956 flooded. During the filling of the Irkutsk reservoir, in the end, only a dead-end route of the Circum-Baikal was left. The railway lost its strategic importance. The number of trains on the road dropped sharply, and security was withdrawn from the tunnels and bridges. Because it was no longer needed, the second track of the Circum-Baikal line was disassembled. In the early 1980s, some even proposed the closure of the line, or that a road be constructed in its place. The villages along the road gradually deteriorated, and people began to abandon the houses. Virtually the only means of communication with the heartland for the residents of these places was the rarely running diesel locomotive, and later a locomotive connected Slyudyanka, and Baikal. Landslides and other natural phenomena on the Circum-Baikal. The greatest challenge for the Circum-Baikal Railway was and still is frequent landslides and mud flows. Even at the time of surveying, engineers noted a strong weathering of the rock layers and a large amount of scree. The demolition of the hillside and the steep slopes during the construction of the trackbed provoked a catastrophic intensification of geodynamic processes. Severe landslides occurred during the construction of roads. In particular at Tunnel 5 in April 1904 a collapse of about 3,000 cubic meters occurred, and a month before the end of the construction a collapse occurred in Tunnel 9 of about 1,000 cubic meters, damaging the masonry of the tunnel. The results of further studies of the rocks along the way showed that they were not as robust as the initial surveys had expected. Moreover, the work associated with the construction of the railway had led to the formation of numerous cracks in the rocks below. Having recognized this danger, the authorities agreed on the construction of retaining walls, the stripping of the hillside, and other measures. In some places dangerous sections were rerouted with new tunnels. Nevertheless, in spite of the work to prevent natural hazards, landslides were a frequent and dangerous phenomenon on the Circum-Baikal, often leading to crashes and interruptions in traffic. For example, in early April 1913 a 4,000 cubic meters landslide occurred on the Irkutsk side at Tunnel 16. As a result, the movement of trains was suspended for 10 days. In April 1929, owing to an earthquake, there was a shift in the rock mass at the 143 km mark, which then collapsed from a height of 200 meters. The rocks broke the retaining wall and damaged both tracks. The delay in traffic as a result of the collapse was 12 hours. In 1937, a piece of rock about 4 meters in diameter fell on a train car, broke through the roof and the floor, and caused a train crash. In 1936, the Marituiskaya section was built for safety purposes. It was one of the most complicated sections of railway in the country. In 1939, on the Western Siberian Railway, the traveling machine station was built, which was carried out by anti-landslide workers. The leveling and clearing of dangerous slopes has continued to the present day. In May 1941, at the 87 kilometers mark of the railway, an 8 cubic meters block, having broken off from height of 30 meters, dislodged a moving train together with a steam locomotive into the lake. This boulder, which has become a popular site, still today holds down some parts of the rolling stock. On September 27, 1948, at the 104 mark, a slope collapsed, with a general volume of about 20,000 cubic meters. As a result, traffic stopped for 4 days. In 1982, a collapse of 900 cubic meters occurred, stopping traffic for a week. In 1991, a collapse of about 700 cubic meters closed off the entrance to a tunnel at the 140 mark. Among other natural phenomena, mud flows and floods have had a negative influence on Circum-Baikal traffic safety. The greatest activity in this respect has occurred on the river Slyudyanka, which runs into Baikal near Station 1. On July 29, 1934, a mudflow on this river had catastrophic consequences, carrying off in its wake several apartment houses and covering the station with a thick layer of silt and sand. In 1960, a mudflow on the Slyudyanka again washed away train tracks and destroyed a series of dams. Powerful downpours in 1971 caused the most severe floods, which led to the destruction of several bridges and tunnel entrances, as well as the foundations of a track on the Circum-Baikal. Another unusual natural phenomenon occurs on the south side of Baikal. The deposition of ice sometimes causes a several-meter heap of ice blocks on the coast, covering the railways with ice. In 16 years alone, from 1932 to 1947, 721 collapses occurred, of which 502 were without consequences for the railway. 201 closed off a single stage and disturbed the top structure of the railway, and 18 caused train wrecks and the destruction of the embankment. According to the data of the Eastern Siberian Engineering Service, between 1930 and 1984 about 1,200 collapses and mudflows were recorded. Besides this, about 500 cases of the falling of individual rocks caused damage to the railway and rolling stock. Engineers described trips on the Circum-Baikal as exciting but dangerous. Current condition. At the present time, the Circum-Baikal Railway is the name of an 89 km long branch covering the route Slyudyanka to Kulchik Marichui Baikal. 4 stations are currently in operation: Kulchik, Marichui, Ulanovo, and Baikal, with one section of double track at 137 kilometers. The Circum-Baikal contains 38 tunnels with a total length of 9,063 meters. There are also 15 stone galleries with a total length of 295 meters and 3 ferro-concrete galleries with apertures, 248 bridges and viaducts, and 268 retaining walls. The Circum-Baikal has no equal in Russia as to the richness of engineering constructions. The tunnels and stone galleries of the Circum-Baikal are unique in that they were constructed atypically and have not been reconstructed since, conserving the initial plan of architects and engineers of the beginning of the century. Kilometers on the modern Circum-Baikal are traditionally measured from the Irkutsk exchange station, which until 1934 was the administrative border between the Tomsk Railway and the Trans-Baikal Railway. The Baikal station is thus located 72 kilometers from this datum point, and the Slyudyanka station at 161 kilometers. In the 1980s and 1990s, measures were begun to reconstruct and strengthen the railway. Currently, normally one train a day runs on the railway. The duration of the trip from Slyudyanka to the Baikal station is 4 hours and 40 minutes. The inhabitants of the trackside settlements call the train or transfer, reflecting the value of this transport for the supply of necessary articles such as bread, salt, matches, vodka, and tobacco. Another name given to the train is, in addition, tourist trains periodically pass along the Circum-Baikal, including steam locomotives and retro-style cars. Tourists can also rent hand cars. By a decision of the Irkutsk Regional Council on December 21, 1982, the section of the Circum-Baikal from Baikal Station to Kulchik Station was declared an architectural and scenic reserve and put under state protection. Beginning in the early 1980s, the tourist potential of the Circum-Baikal Railway began to come into its own. A series of tourist areas are in operation: Tiger at 134 kilometers, Sensation at 102 kilometers, Peak and Ifris at 98 kilometers, Retro and the Silver Key at 80 kilometers. Along with actual railway sites, tourists on the Circum-Baikal route are attracted by the numerous nature reserves, including the rocky formations such as, in the settlements along the Circum-Baikal, especially in Marachuvik. A number of early 20th century items in the modernist style are preserved. The following establishments are also located on the Circum-Baikal at 80 kilometers. A research experimental base, the Center for Preservation of Historical and Cultural Heritage. At 106 kilometers, the base of a nuclear research institute. At 119 to 120 kilometers, a research area for students of the Biological and Soil Studies Department of the Irkutsk State University. The 100th anniversary of the railway was celebrated in the autumn of 2005. For this event, the Baikal station was reconstructed, in which an exhibit was opened, devoted to the Circum-Baikal. The Slyudyanka station was also rebuilt. List of stations and stops depictions. The construction of the Circum-Baikal Railway is described in Baikal, a sacred sea, by the Siberian writer Imborg. The Circum-Baikal Railway is praised in a poem by the Irkutsk poet Yuri Levitansky. The Trans-Siberian Railway, including the Circum-Baikal section, has been depicted by a number of painters, including Vladimir Tomilovsky, and by photographers such as Igor Berginsky and Galina Gorobova. Bibliography. Alexandrov, N.A. 1991, No. 5. 100. Irkutsk, 1998. Kobta, A.B. 2002, No. 2.